I'm Lainey Castle, Project Director in the ALA Public Programs Office. Thank you for joining us for this webinar, which is part of the ALA Great Stories Club on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, which is a project that has been made possible by the Kellogg Foundation. Per the messages that we have posted to the discussion list, this session is being recorded and it's going to be shared with other grantees who were not able to attend during the live event. So for if any reason you have any concerns about that, please feel free to disconnect and we will get you access to the archive instead. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this online gathering, which brings together two of our Great Stories Club TRHT cohorts. If I could ask everyone who is not a presenter to just click mute if you're just joining us, I'll watch you. So our two cohorts bring together project directors from 30 libraries that are going to host a series on the theme Deeper Than Our Skins. The present is a conversation with the past, and another 40 libraries that will present the series Finding Your Voice, Speaking Truth to Power. All of us on the project team at ALA and at our partner organizations are so excited for your involvement with this project. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to prepare your proposals, plan your programs, and engage with us to bring these collections of books, conversations, and opportunities for partnership and connection to young people in your unique communities. Over the next 3 weeks, we are planning to see everyone in Chicago for our orientation workshop. Although we do have 2 days together for that time and a busy agenda, it never seems like quite enough time to cover everything, which is one of the reasons that we have asked all of you to participate in today's Racial Healing Circle Methodology webinar. Moua and Monica Haslip, racial healing practitioners who have received training from the Kellogg Foundation and serve as consultants to the foundation, are here with us today. We are so lucky to have them to provide everyone with an overview first of TRHT, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, as envisioned by the Kellogg Foundation. Following that, they will speak with you about the core elements of a racial healing circle, which each of you will experience as our first activity together on Thursday during the workshop in Chicago. Me and Monica's presentation will provide important context for the circle experience, and we're going to follow it with a 30-minute Q&A, so you'll have plenty of time to answer, to ask your questions during that time. And on that note, just a few instructions for communication in our Zoom classroom. If you have any kind of a technical issue, please use the Q&A window labeled as such at the bottom of your screen to communicate with Brian Russell. Actually, maybe at the top or the bottom, I'm not sure. If you mouse over it, it should pop up. To send a message through Q&A, you move your cursor to the bottom of that window, click on Q&A. We ask that you don't put technical questions in the chat because we're going to use that space to engage with questions about the presentation content. Brian is going to respond to any technical problems as as possible, but please don't panic if you're having any trouble. We are recording the session and we will allow you to access it at any point through the archive. During the Q&A session, everyone will have the ability to submit questions via the chat feature. Although questions are only going to be taken during the Q&A breakout, feel free to enter your questions at any time that they come to mind. We'll save those and queue them to review later. If you connected to the webinar by phone, you can also state your questions that way during the Q&A period. Just a reminder to have your phone muted during the presentation sections. And then if you are connected to the webinar as a panelist, you'll have access to a webcam and a microphone. And this would be anyone who used the alternate link that Brian sent out very recently this afternoon. And again, just make sure that your microphone is muted. So I think that is it. Thank you for your help with those technical concerns. And now it's my pleasure to hand the microphone over to Monica. Monica and me, thank you so much for being with us today and for all of the incredible support and expertise that you have lent to ALA and to this project all along. We appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. We're really glad to be with you all today. I'm going to open up a little bit by talking about, giving you a little background on the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation framework. I want to open up by reading a quote by Dr. Gail Christopher that says, "Racial healing circles is not just a conversation and more than just a safe space. It's an experience that engages the heart and requires the heart to be open and expansive. It reaffirms the humanity in all of us. It is a commitment to acknowledge that the unconscious bias lives in all of us. And it's the spiritual work of affirming and loving ourselves. That was written by Dr. Gail Christopher, and it really connects to the overarching truth, racial healing, and transformation work. This work started in 2016, and it was designed to jettison the belief in the hierarchy of human value. In 2016, Dr. Gail Christopher, who is now retired and was previously the designer, one of the co-designers of the TRHT at Kellogg Foundation. Kellogg brought together about 176 leaders from around the country, individuals and representing organizations. They represented in total about 144 national entities, and their reach collectively was about 289 million people. And this collection of people and organizations resulted in a year of planning where we came together. Each of us was assigned to a different component of the framework as it was designed, and it resulted in the creation of an implementation guide. So just to give you a little bit of feedback on what the framework consisted of, it was really designed around 5 core areas: narrative change, racial healing and relationship building, separation law, and economy. The narrative change and the racial healing and relationship building component are really sort of the anchor components of the framework. And that work has been, really carried out over the last couple of years in 14 cities around the country, which were the first 14 cities that were selected to implement the TRHT in the communities. The racial healing and relationship component is really where we're going to focus. Me and I have worked together quite a bit over the last couple of years, moving around the country, doing trainings in the racial healing and relationship building component of the framework. But it's really designed to actually implement change in communities. The framework is designed to help communities heal and produce actionable change in those communities. And the racial healing and relationship building component creates the vehicle for those opportunities to occur. So Kellogg has put together the implementation guide, which is available online at Kellogg through their healoutcommunities.org. So if you, along the way, want to learn more about the framework itself, feel free to go to Kellogg's website, and there's a tremendous amount of information about the TRHT framework. So now we're going to actually sort of turn it over to me so we can talk a little bit more about the racial healing circles in particular.
Sure. The racial healing circle, as Monica said, is one of the core pillars of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation framework. And I love the previous slides that Monica has shared with all of you, because you can see that the narrative change work is in boxes. The law, the economy, and separation work are in boxes. But if you think about that picture as being in 3D form, you can see that the racial healing circle and relationship building work is actually, it occupies all of the blue space. And we look to and we see the Racial Healing Circle work as, the glue, the adhesive. It's the building of the relationships that creates the conditions for us to be successful in doing the rest of the other work. Often people ask us, what is a racial healing circle? Why a circle? What does healing mean? And after they go through the experience, people often say, where is the racial in the racial healing circle? And I just want to flag this for you. I'm going to walk through what an experience in the racial healing circle is going to look like. And then when I get to the end of walking through the different elements, I'd like to invite Monica to come back in, and we will answer those 3 questions for you. Why a circle? What does healing mean while you're in the circle experience? And where is the racial in the racial healing circle? Okay. So when Monica and I and our co-facilitators see you, whether it's in next week or at the first week or second week in February, you will come into a space that will be co-facilitated by 2 facilitators. The room will be arranged in a circle format. We will invite you to sit in circle with us, and we will take you through, I believe we have about 2 hours with you. Sometimes, depending on the number of people in the process with us, the time could range anywhere from 90 minutes, which is what we call an introductory circle, to 3.5, almost 4 hours, to really give the participants an opportunity to fully experience the circle process. But really there are about 7 core steps that we take you through when you come into circle with us. We begin with a welcome, and then we will do a quick self-introduction, but we'll also invite you around the circle to also introduce yourself. And once we're finished with the introduction, then we will take you through a process that's called a group agreement. And for those of you who have participated in retreats and meetings, most group processes require a commitment to a set of group agreements to both anchor, right, as well as to commit to how we will show up in the space with each other in the moment, but also how we show up in the space with each other after we've experienced the circle together. So we will take you through a process called the group agreement, and in that process we will use a document that we will have printed out and share with you called the touchstones. Once we've gone through the group agreement, then we will take you through an exercise we call the reintroductory exercise. And the reason why we call it a reintroductory exercise is that we have given you an opportunity to do a brief self-introduction, but we want to create a distinction between a factoid, factual introduction of ourselves versus what it would be like if we were to actually engage in interactive introduction of ourselves to each other. And so we will walk you through that experience. And then after we go through the reintroductory exercise, which actually is a series of sometimes 1, sometimes 2 short questions, right, in the reintroductory exercise. We will ask you to look around the room and pair up with somebody you don't know or would like to get to know better. And we will give you the first question. We'll give you about a minute and a half. And these are not deep questions. They're quick, questions that you will likely have a response at the top of your mind. And we will invite you to share your quick response with your partner. And then we'll turn around and have your partner share that with you. And we'll likely do that with 2 people. So after the first person, we'll have you then pair up with the second person. We'll give you another question. We'll give you another question, and then have you do the same thing with a second person. And that's, in essence, the reintroductory exercise where we invite you to introduce yourself see each other in a deeper and more meaningful way. After that experience, we will do a quick debrief of the experience. And then we will take you into what we call the core component piece of the experience. And that's where we will lead you through a process where we will pair you up with somebody in the group. So we will have already pre-paired you with somebody in the group. And you may already be aware of this because I believe Lainey and Brian may have asked you for some background information that will allow us to be able to meaningfully pair you with somebody else in the group. And with your partner, or we call this a dyad partner, we will give you what we call a prompt or a deep reflection question. And in this portion of the experience, we will invite you then to go into a space with your dyad partner. We'll give you about 6 to 10 minutes, depending on how much time we have, to split between the two of you, with each of you having anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes to respond to the prompt or deep reflection question with your partner. And then we'll have you switch and have the other person respond and share your response to the question with your partner. At the end of that dyad sharing time, we will invite all of you back into the circle, and we will then invite you to share, if you would like, your stories with the larger group. The principle behind the sharing is that we know, a friend of ours, Liz Medicine Crow, often says that the shortest distance between two people is a story. And we know that if you come willing and consent to the sharing of your life experiences and your heart stories, that through this process, people make some of the most amazing connections. And so in this process, it's by invitation, but we would like to invite people to share the stories that they've shared with their partner in the larger group. And then in the sharing process, we will facilitate a reflection or an affirmation of those experiences in the circle. When we've had most, if not all, the people in the circle share their experience, and this is depending on how much time we have left in the circle process, then we will bring the circle experience to a close. We'll make some high-level remarks to pull the circle together, and then we'll have some kind of a closing event to commemorate, to mark the experience together. So just very quickly, again, over the process, there will be a welcome and a self-introduction. We'll go through a group agreement. We will take you through a reintroductory exercise where you answer quick questions with a partner. Then we will give you a deep reflection prompt or a deep reflection question and have you then respond to that with your predetermined dyad partner. We'll have you come back into the full circle, and we will walk you through, take you through a sharing and a debrief, and then we'll bring the circle to a closure. And that is a forecast of what you will be experiencing in our circles next week, as well as for those of you in early February. So just taking maybe 5 more minutes, and I want to invite Monica to join me in this component, because what we want to do is to kind of break down for you is this is the experience, right? Why do we call this a racial healing circle? So Monica?
Yeah, sure. So the reason we actually call this a racial healing circle is because it's an opportunity for people to have hard conversations with each other that they typically wouldn't be able to have in any other way. One of the really important parts of what we do as racial healing practitioners is sort of the beginning of the whole process, which is the introduction and the anchoring of the space. it really gives us an opportunity to see ourselves as participants as well as folk who are actually holding space for other people. And the circle itself represents the opportunity to be in an environment where there is no hierarchy of human value. There's no beginning, there's no end. We typically don't have our introductions include things that are not specifically related to the individual. So we come to the circle bringing our full selves. And so that really is the focus of the circle. The circle is an experience to engage your heart. It requires the heart to be open and expansive. It affirms the humanity in all of us. And it's a commitment to acknowledge that unconscious bias lives in all of us. So, you know, it's really an opportunity for there to be a safe space where truth telling is most important, along with deep listening. Those are the two critical elements of the racial healing circle. Is the opportunity for people to have a space where their truth can be told, and that they have the opportunity to deeply listen and see the common humanity between those that are in the circle.
And that was beautiful. And I'll just end by saying that for us, for me, the inspiration of the Racial Healing Circle process, in addition to all the things that Monica has talked about, is really in essence the idea that whenever we make a human connection, right? Whenever we made a heart connection, whenever we make a life experience connection with somebody else in the circle, that's the moment, right? It's that connectivity that chips away with the consequences of racism that we've had to live with in this country. Because as you know, racism and its consequences has led to generations of broken relationships between each other and amongst each other. And I mean, at the bottom of my heart, I am in this work because I believe that one person at a time, one relationship at a time, one circle at a time, the moment through the sharing of our heart stories, we make that heart connection with somebody in the circle. That's the moment when we mend, right, a broken relationship. We shore up the trust and the empathy that we need to begin to undo the consequences that we've had to live with racism in this country. And so that is in essence, right, why in the circle, why the healing comes through in the transformation and making the connection. And that's why the healing circle is the space where we believe that we can really begin to do the work around racism, or to do the racial work in the racial healing circle. So we'll leave it at that. And I know we want to leave a lot of time for you all to ask questions. So you know, if anybody has questions, we'll open up the question portion of the webinar.
Just want to step in for a minute and say thank you to Mia and Monica for sharing all that great information. And also to say that all 4 of our circle co-facilitators will be with us in Chicago and have generously agreed to be available during lunch, because I know it's a learning process for everyone, and you may not have questions at the moment, but after you complete the circle, you may have some things on your mind, and so they will be available to answer your questions while we are there together. And I am looking at the I think the chat, which is where we have asked for questions to come in, and not seeing any so far. We'll just keep an eye. A question from KE. Thank you for this clear presentation. Will there be information strategies to work with our groups? Yes. So this presentation is part of contextualizing and breaking down the racial healing circle. You will have that experience, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions about that. But we will also cover a whole lot of other information during the workshops regarding working with your groups, everything from using the books to have open conversations. Just the basic best practices of dialogue facilitation will be covered. We'll have breakout groups that deal with everyone's sort of particular groups of readers. I know you're all working with people from very different backgrounds, so we will have you sort of pre-sorted to talk about questions about service, all sorts of different questions, as well as for people to brainstorm the way that you are working with a racial healing practitioner or otherwise building racial healing work into your TRHT Great Stories Club program. A question from Faye, do you recommend we bring any materials with us to the training?
Yeah, for the rest of the time you're together, bring whatever you need. For the circle experience, everything that you will need, we will have on your seat waiting for you. And so don't feel like you need to bring, writing utensils. I mean, in fact, you can leave everything, back in your hotel room or wherever, because we just want you to show up as you.
And generally, we will have everything that you need to participate in the workshop there. If you would like to bring a copy of the books that you're using for the purposes of note-taking or just to reference them during the discussion, that's the only thing that I can recommend. Everything else will be there for you. A question from Dennis, is the process indicated, set in its order, or can the steps be taken more fluidly?
So
oh, you mean the element? Go ahead, Monica.
I would recommend that the steps be taken as designed, because there's been a tremendous amount of work and testing that's been done with this methodology and process. And I think as you evolve in this process, it opens up to other opportunities for you to expand it and to make it more sort of connected to your own approach. But we recommend on the front end that we encourage people to follow the process and trust the process, because the process itself, we've seen the transformation as a result of going through the steps that have been designed.
I see another question from Amy. I know you had us take some of the Harvard bias assessments. Can you please give us some background on these assessments and how they might be used in the training? So that is actually something that came from the section that will be led by Consultants to Everyday Democracy. They will give a little bit more context during the workshop, but generally, both from Everyday Democracy's perspective as well as the external evaluator that worked with us, with ALA on this project during the pilot phase, I think there was an overall recommendation that everyone is just in a different phase of their learning about things like implicit bias, and that was an important process for everyone to engage with and understand a little bit better as part of this training. So the tests that you've been asked to take in advance relate specifically to the books in the series that you're participating in. So different implicit bias tests have been identified for the Deeper Than Our Skins series and for the Finding Your Voice series. So you don't need to bring your results, you just need to be familiar with them, and our presenters will walk you through some exercises and reflections based on those assessments. No pens and pencils, how will I survive? Do people generally bring laptops to take notes? It's a matter of personal preference. There will be wireless if you need access to the internet, but it's really just totally up to you.
And I would just say in the circle,
No.
just bring yourself.
Yes. I should say we will have the bulk of our literature conversations happening in a space, but the racial healing circles, there'll be 2 going on concurrently. They will be in totally different spaces that are really just set with nothing other than a circle of chairs. So you can leave all of your belongings in the main sort of room for the workshop and just kind of come with just yourself, just your physical self to the circle. Question from Tracy. I've wondered, and please excuse me if this is inappropriate, has anyone used different language in reference to a racial healing circle when promoting to teens? In our early stages, I've noticed that our teens seem intimidated by the name, but the circle itself seems fun and relaxing.
Just from my experience, we haven't changed the title or, we've used Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation and Racial Healing Circle for all of the circles I've done with you in the past. And I think there is a difference, because there's an expectation that's set in the beginning when they hear it's a racial healing circle. But, I think it has been beneficial in ways because once they recognize and get into the process, they realize that it is a much more open and expansive experience, and that they are not, dealing with racial questions and issues directly. And I think that's one of the things me talked a little bit about in the beginning, which I'm going to sort of invite her to chime in with me about this issue of where's the racial in the racial healing circle.
Yeah, I think it isn't just teens. I think even, among the general public, people have often said to us, can we call it something else other than like racial healing circles? Because, it means different things to different people, and people may have different expectations when they show up. And I would agree with all of that. And the reason why we've continued to call it a racial healing circle is that I think it presents a really good opportunity in the invitation, when we send out the invitation, to talk about the component pieces, right? Why a circle? Why healing? And when you come, where or how will you experience the racial within the circle? And so that's why we wanted to share our responses to that with you. And as you begin to do this work and move forward, when we do Preparation Institute, the trainings for new facilitators, right? We call this the elevator speech. We invite each of us, to be comfortable in the skin of being able to talk about why we call this a racial healing circle. Because on the one hand, we don't want to not meet people's expectations or scare people away. We do want to be very clear that this work is about how do we mend the broken relationship? How do we, as Dr. Christopher say, get to jettisoning, right, this false hierarchy of human value, which is in some way, it's a term of art, right, that is unique to Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation, right? The idea that at some point in our history, a taxonomist just came up with the idea of who is superior and who is inferior in this false hierarchy of human value based on our skin color, right? And that's been the legacy that has been governing our relationships with each other since the beginning, right? And that when we talk about the healing piece, we talk about the fact that those who've been the perpetrators of racism and those who have been the victims of racism have been equally harmed by this false hierarchy of human value which has, as it continues to persist, has acted in ways that has broken the human family apart, right? And has made us each other's enemies. And that, in essence, this is what racism is, that we're living under the consequences of those broken relationships. And so I know that for young people, this can get really heavy. But our hope is that by taking you through this experience and having the opportunity to talk through, right, some of these questions, that you, being the wonderful, creative, thoughtful, smart people that you are, will help us, and you work with young people, that you will help us take some of this content, right, and help us to digest it in a way that would connect with young people. And so that's why we also felt that the Racial Healing Circle experience, in the context of the books that you're working with, seems like it's a really good pairing. Because even though we can't quite articulate what it is, the books are a concrete manifestation of the consequences that we've all had to live under, right? Under this false hierarchy of human value.
Thank you. A question from Sherry. What strategies do you have for reaching out to other groups? After reading info on the WK Kellogg Foundation website, the content emphasized inviting other groups. Sometimes those that, quote, need to participate in these type of exercises are those that we fail to invite. How can we reach those who are overtly racists and or different religious groups without making it seem like the attempt to invite them is racist itself? I hope this makes sense. It does to me. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we just we just talked about that in a previous conversation this morning on another call, because as this work develops and evolves around the country, one of the things that everybody is thinking about is how do you get, how do you not preach to the choir? You know, how do you get people who really we need at the table and in these relationships, at the table and in the relationships. And I think that that will take on a different strategy in different places. What we're seeing is that every city and every community has its own priority and its own strategy for reaching the people that they're trying to really invite to see the impact of truth, racial healing, and transformation. And I think over time, it will be a strategy that gets developed locally and also as a much larger TRHT community. And we are at a place where those discussions are starting, where we are really, we have largely been preaching to the choir and getting people prepared to go out to have these discussions using the tools and the methodology of the Racial Healing Circle to be an opportunity to invite people into spaces that are not threatening, to begin to build these relationships and dialogues, and then inviting them to move further into these communities where we'd like to see this work begin to expand. So I would say that we're at a point where we are looking to everybody engaged in the process to help build and think about the strategy that helps us to reach the communities that you're talking about.
And I think that there are, as Monica has been doing this work, we have seen some successful applications of what I call micro strategies, you know, around how to, what I call how to invite, right, the unusual suspects to the table to engage in the conversation. And I feel like it's a dual strategy. It's both about the invitation itself. How do you word the invitation, right? But secondly, it's also about who is doing the inviting, right? Who's doing the inviting. And so, you know, oftentimes when we consult with some of our grantees on the ground who are doing this work, we would say to them, you know, as much as we all may live, right, in isolation and in our own lanes, if we make the time to actually do a relationship mapping, there are actually spaces where there are nexus of relationships that can get uncovered, right? You know, the toughest person on taking down the monuments, who have taken the toughest political position on that publicly, maybe somebody, maybe in your professional life, lives in a lane that's very different from you. But after you do a mapping, you might discover that that person's brother or that person, you know, has a staff person who actually goes to your church. And that a way to get to that individual in an authentic and genuine way, right, is that instead of going directly to that person, you may want to start with who are the circles of influence around them that you would like to invite into a circle experience to make those individuals be your validators and be your ambassadors, right, of the process. And because we so trust the process, we believe that once you start to get to one layer of the relationship and they feel the transformation themselves and experience the transformation themselves in the process, then we turn around, we ask them to then be the invitor of the other person into the circle experience. And so sometimes it's not a direct path. Sometimes you have to kind of map out the relationship, and you have to, in the most authentic and genuine way, you know, maybe start with, you know, 2 other relationships prior to getting to that one relationship. But it is about mapping your relationship network and thinking through who has the credibility and the trust, right, of the individual that you want in the circle to get them into the circle in the most genuine, authentic way possible. Because it is really only through that people come open, right, to the experience. And that mere first step of being open to the experience is exactly the fertile ground that we need through the process to create those heart connections and those human connections that the circle the circle will guide, right, people to reach that experience. I hope that was helpful. And at the meeting, if you have any more specific questions, come to the methodology discussion, and we could, you know, go a little bit deeper and more specific. If you have like a set of people that you would like to have this experience with, would love to strategize with you at the 2-day experience.
Thank you very much. There are some terrific comments here just in the chat that I'm not going to read through, but that I invite you to read. I'm just going to look for the next question for the purposes of this archive recording. I don't see anything else that is a straightforward question, and I hope I'm not missing anyone's comments. Well, a question from KE, will there be specific ideas and strategies for working with youth that have had a lot of trauma in lives and are often hesitant to participate in anything, much less anything new? I will respond to this quickly and then also turn it over to me and Monica to see if you have anything to add, especially Monica, I know you work daily with young people from this age group. We will have some breakout sessions that put you in close connection with people that are working with populations similar to the ones that you will be working with. So for example, if you are working in a detention facility, we view that as a pretty specialized group of young people, and we will be mixing together people that are extremely veterans in their careers in terms of their experience with that population, and some people who are maybe brand new to that work to connect you with each other. We have also run essentially a survey to find out how many people have access to mental health providers. We have some web-based resources that we won't teach to during the workshop, but that are, I believe, already available on the website that deal with addressing and preparing for working with youth who have experienced significant trauma. But then I'm going to turn this over also to Monica and or me if you have something to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that was one of the things that Lainey and I talked about originally, was to make sure that, you know, there were supports that had been identified up front that students and young people could be referred to if you discover that they need additional support. And those are things that we're thinking about now as we are doing more circles with teenagers. I have a high school here in Chicago, and we have racial healing circles that we do here at the school. And a part of the reason we did it is because we wanted to get their input and their feedback on ways in which we can improve this work that would be relevant, you know, to them. And so we are learning that the process itself works with our young people. They really enjoy the racial healing circle process. And so we haven't had to really change a whole lot of things other than the way that we come into anchoring the space with them. And perhaps some of the introductory exercises that we have with them. We've made some changes based on their recommendations. And so I think getting the engagement of young people so they can give us feedback on how to make this experience most meaningful to them is really what we need to do in this process. Because when we started out, most of the work that we did with the racial healing circles was with adults. And the first time that I actually worked with teenagers was with ALA. And probably many of the concerns or thoughts that you have in relationship to it, I had originally, until I actually went out into the field and started doing the circles with teenagers. And then I started doing them internally here and really discovered that, you know, the process itself is one that they fully get engaged in, and they have helped us to really figure out how to make it a deeper and more meaningful relationship building experience between the teens in the circle. So I would just say that so far the process seems to be effective with a few tweaks based on the things that they suggested make it more relevant for them. And that's some of the prompt questions and the intros and the reintroductory exercises.
Ditto everything that Monica has said. The one addition that I would add is that I think for young people, even more so than for adults, who the co-facilitators are really, really matters. And when we do this work, we always ask for a pair, right? 2 co-facilitators. And we want our co-facilitators to be diverse in their racial, gender, ethnic, gender identity backgrounds, because we think that model, we know that models the diversity, but we also know that depending on the composition in the room, who the co-facilitators are really matters in terms of helping to set the energy and create some ease and trust and comfort in the room. And with young people, that's even extra critical. I it's coming from, I've done this with young people, and I know that there was, for me, that there was a layer of emotional connection that was absent because I was doing a circle with all African-American young people, and I'm Asian American, and my co-facilitator was a white woman, right? And so it's not, it's a learning experience. It's really important, it's critical. And we know that as grown-ups, we already come, half a step behind in terms of credibility in young people's space. And so the way we think about who the co-facilitators are going to be really important so that, we establish some credibility right on the front end. And I'm not saying that the kind of diversity of composition is a negative. I'm just saying that that's just the reality. And if we can be explicit and sensitive to that, especially when we're working with young people, it will go a long way in terms of creating the right conditions in the environment for them to be able to fully experience the process.
Yeah. And I would just quickly add to that, one of the things that we did in Chicago was I trained a couple of young adults who really co-facilitated the healing circles with the teens. And that was by far one of the best decisions we could have made, because there was an immediate connection to the co-facilitators as a result of them being close to them in age, and them having relevant language and, listening to the same music and all of these connections that they felt were present that create that space of trust coming into the circle. Because really, ultimately, that's our role. Our role is to anchor the space with trust so people feel comfortable coming into a place where they can share their authentic stories. And so when people feel that connection coming in, especially teenagers, it makes the experience a lot more meaningful.
Thank you. Another question. How does the TRHT process relate to restorative justice methods and circles? From Elise.
You want to take that, me, or?
Sure. We say that the racial healing circle process is a sibling, right, of the restorative justice process or the peace circle process. We know that the reason why the methodology works is because, all of these different practices centers around a circle, right? And so there's a familiarity to the symbolism of what a circle is. But the racial healing circle process differs a little bit. And when I think about all of these different circle processes that are out there, I think that it's amazing to have all these methodologies out there, and that they're all the tools that we need, right, in our toolkit that we can pull out and we can use it depending on the circumstances or where we're at in the community. Racial healing circles come from a perspective that it is about the process, and it is about connecting through stories and connecting through connecting at our common humanity level. Restorative justice circles actually has an end, right? It's about bringing people together to be able to get to a resolution. And so they're siblings. They're both circle processes, peace circle processes, and they're all processes. But the methodologies are different, and the end goal of the outcomes are a little bit different of the two. And so we have trained many people who are peace circle keepers or restorative justice practitioners, and we bring them into the racial healing circle process, and they're like, oh, okay, we get it. We see the difference. And yes, this is yet another tool in my toolbox, because racial healing circles is about building relationships, whereas restorative justice is about getting to an end product of an apology or an agreement, or that there's an end product to what it is that they want to get to. And so they're siblings, they're a little bit different, but they work to complement each other.
I think we have 2 more questions pending. I'm going to do those, and then we will probably wrap up. From Sherry, will you be creating or publishing a strategies pamphlet? This work could have great impact. Do you want to refer to particular documents that are already there?
Well, Monica talked about the implementation guide, and so I think we have that link that we're going to make made available. The Kellogg Foundation has published a pamphlet they call the Restoring to Wholeness document that I think it's very good in giving you some language and concepts to work with around, what is the racial healing circle. And getting at the 3 component pieces of the circle, what is healing, and where is the racial and the racial healing circle experience. There are a couple of other pieces of research that we sometimes offer up, and I can share this with Lainey. I think I've shared this before, but there is a research piece that talks about that as human beings, we are inherently connected to each other through storytelling and the stories that we tell each other about, and that those stories not only embody our life experiences, and it talks about where we come from, but the way the stories are shared, the way that we tell the stories, also represent our belief system, right, about who we are and where we come from, and that as human beings, we gravitate towards stories. And that's why story making and storytelling is so important for us, and it is through that process that we connect with each other. And so there's a wonderful piece of research that I love to refer people to, and I know librarians love to read and do research, and so for those of you who need a little bit of the science behind why this methodology is so powerful, we'll make that piece of that article available to you as well.
Sounds good. And I should say, Restoring to Wholeness, we will have physical copies for you to take home from the meeting in Chicago. And if you find that sort of, overview pamphlet is helpful in communication that you may be undertaking with staff at your library or with your partner organization, ALA can chat with the Kellogg Foundation about maybe getting some extra copies for people who would be able to make use of them. I think one more question here. One last question and then we'll close. From KE, have you used circle, in quotes, symbols from different cultures as part of an introduction with students?
I haven't. No.
But that's for beautiful, smart, creative people, because I think that will be beautiful, right? I'm a big proponent of that. The way we do this work is we're really changing the culture of who we are as a community, and things like the different symbols. We're culture making with these young people as we engage them in these relationship building and conversations. We are transforming the culture of how we exist as a community, and so I love it. It's a great idea, and I think that you should think through and share out with us how successful it is.
Yeah, and in this the framework of the racial healing circle, the introduction, the self-introduction is a really beautiful place to bring a lot of those kinds of ideas to the circle as a part of the anchoring of the space, and also sharing of yourself. And so all of the racial healing practitioners bring their own and a variety of different unique pieces of information about themselves and about their culture and other cultures to the circle as a way to sort of anchor the space and to introduce young people and adults to the beauty of the diversity of humanity. So I think I'm with me. I think that's a beautiful idea and would love to see how it unfolds.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you to me and Monica for being here with us and for sharing everything. We are very excited to see you in Chicago. Thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your busy days to join us for the webinar today. Thank you for your great questions and your ideas that you've been sharing. So I hopefully will be seeing about half of you soon next week in Chicago and the rest of you in March. In the meantime, if anything comes to mind, if you have questions, please get in touch with us at the Public Programs Office. Otherwise, thanks to all and safe travels sometime soon.
Great.
Thanks, Lainey. Bye.
Bye.